But there's more. There's more than just partnering with God. There's a bit more to the story. And so in order to continue this conversation, I think we need to go and find Paul. Remember Paul, gentleman who penned most of the New Testament, started a lot of new churches and things like this, but he was also a man who was particularly familiar with prison. He was a person who was particularly familiar with being oppressed, having people who were trying to hurt him. He had this habit of saying, Jesus is Lord. And if he would have just said, he got one word wrong, if he would have just said, Caesar is Lord, then he wouldn't have had any problems. But unfortunately, for him, I guess, and his health, he kept on saying Jesus is Lord. He had this conviction that Christ had risen from the dead, and he was willing to even go to prison because of it. Crazy man, I know, right? But listen to what he says in Philippians, which, by the way, is a letter that he wrote while he was in jail. While he was in jail, waiting for his trial. And this trial, by the way, so we're all clear, was a trial where the judge could say, you're innocent, go free, and he would go free on the spot. Or, you're guilty, and they would execute him. And so Paul, in this moment, doesn't know what is going to happen. There's an incredible amount of uncertainty, and I would imagine anxiety. This is one of those moments, perhaps, where Paul is finding himself in, quite literally, a prison. And listen to what he says. He says, I fully expect, I want to repeat that. I fully expect and hope that I will never be ashamed, but that I will continue to be bold for Christ as I have been in the past. And I trust that my life will bring honor to Christ whether I live or die. Where does Paul get this type of hope and boldness from? He says he is fully, not just a little bit. Where does he get this type of hope and certainty and boldness? Certainly it's not from his circumstances. Perhaps it's from a little bit of his inner conviction. He's met Christ, and so he knows that there's truth there. But it doesn't take us long to find where he gets his boldness and hope from. If we look back just one verse, in verse 19 of that same chapter, Paul writes, For I know that as you pray for me, and the Spirit of Jesus helps me, this will lead to my deliverance. It's okay. I should get used to that particular sound while we're on the topic. Oh, goodness. Anyways, sorry. Something about deliverance. Yes, for this will lead to my deliverance. Paul, from prison, not knowing whether he will live or die. He says, listen, I know that this circumstance is going to work out for my deliverance. And here are the two reasons why I know that it will. One, because of the prayers of you. He says, the prayers of my brothers and sisters in the faith. And two, the Spirit of Jesus. He says, I know, I am certain that because of those two things, that I will have hope and boldness, even in this situation. I would say it like this, perhaps. I think Paul has an incredibly high value for human solidarity. Standing with each other. Because there are times where we feel like Paul in prison, or like the Israelites who are being just ravaged. There are those times where hope and strength and peace forgiveness, patience. They seem like limited commodities, and perhaps if we're honest, there are even times where that arrow is getting very close to E. And it's in those moments where I believe Paul would tell us that through the prayers of our brothers and sisters in the Spirit of Jesus, that everything we need will be provided. And that even that will work out for our deliverance. Hey, I don't have much strength right now. Do you have any extra? No? All right, well, you need to find some too then. I'm really running low on hope. Do you have any hope that I could have? Huh? What about prayers? Could you pray? I mean, part of enlisting in the kingdom of God, friends, is that we would stand with each other. What if this place was known throughout the community? That, hey, if you don't have any hope, man, you can go up the hill to Messiah. They got a lot up there. And give you some. You feel like you can't take one more step forward? You can go up to them. They'll find you. And they'll take that next step with you. What if this is how we interacted with each other? What if this was the thing that we protected above all else? And so we will stand with each other. And when we have made this decision to enlist in the kingdom of God, we're going to partner with God and we're going to partner with each other. And if there's anything that you need, brother, sister, come talk to me. We can pray for each other. We can give those things to each other. And through that and through the Spirit of Jesus, this too will work out for my deliverance. Now, there's one final place that I think we need to go. And it's to a miracle of Jesus. Now, this is not an unknown miracle. This is a very well-known miracle. This is Jesus healing the man born blind. But I think that it invites us into a particular way of thinking that I would love to flesh out for us. So, in the book of John, John tells this story about how Jesus and his disciples, they're walking down the road, right? And they see a man who was born blind. And Jesus' disciples ask him, Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? And Jesus says, neither. Neither him nor his parents sinned. This man was born blind so that God's power would be shown in him. And then he throws this little line on there. He says, while it is still day, there is basically work to be done. He says, the night is coming, but it's not night yet. And while I am in the world, by the way, I am the light of the world. And then, if you remember, Jesus takes some dirt on the ground and he spits on the dirt and he mixes it up and he makes mud and he puts it on a gentleman's eyes. And then he tells this gentleman to go and wash in the pool of Siloam, which means sent. And this man is healed. Now, I think that there are a couple of things that I would like to highlight for us in this particular story. And the first thing I think that's important is the disciples' immediate reaction to seeing someone in need. This man was born blind. He was on the side of the road begging for someone to see him, someone to notice him, help him. Perhaps he was begging for money or for food or for comfort, for someone to touch him and to lead him somewhere. His disciples, they see him on the side of the road, and rather than perhaps ask this compassionate person, Jesus, who up to this point had fed thousands of people. He had shown compassion and shown mercy, and he had done the miraculous. They had this Jesus right next to them. And instead of saying, hey, Jesus, could you heal this man? They want to take it to a theological level. And they say, who sinned? Was it this man or was it his parents? See, there was a theology at work there. And there was basically the understanding at this time period that if you were born with some sort of physical malady, then that meant that you were marked, you were somehow cursed. And so rather than help this man, they want to talk. And I wonder, even in my own life, how many times right in front of me there was someone that I could have helped, or a situation that I could have brought my strength and contributed something, even just a little to. And instead of acting with compassion and bringing myself fully into that moment, I was comfortable standing back and just talking about it. And I wonder if our first reaction to injustice, to someone who is oppressed, to some sort of terrible situation, is not just to stand back and wonder about, why did this happen? Was it something that they did? Was it something someone else did? What's the story behind it? Who's at fault? How do we do this? How do we do that? Rather than bring our strength and just say, you know what? I have something to offer, and I just want to offer it. And we'll perhaps work out the details later.